Musicians then enter the ballroom, to which they are called, winding their way through the shadowy figures of a lifetime that surround the dance floor. One by one they appear, suddenly popping out of the darkness into the brilliant spotlights, walking slowly across the dance floor, mounting the orchestral riser. A violin, a cello, a bass, a clarinet, a flute, followed by a piccolo player, then another clarinet, even a giant harp. On and on until all the musicians are seated. They open their cases in what seems like slow motion. And then the room is filled with that familiar cacophony of an orchestra warming up before a performance. And at any point in this ritual, it is not too late. The end is not yet written. An orchestra, even in the middle of its warm-up, can suddenly stop. The musicians return their instruments to their cases and exit the ballroom. A false alarm, so to speak. And if it is not a false alarm, then the orchestra finishes its warm-up. It begins to play that song that the dancers themselves wanted to hear, which only they recognize. The actual dance begins, and it can be wonderful and intimate and beautiful. And as the breathing becomes slower and shallower, the sound builds and the dance becomes intense. And then the breathing becomes even slower and softer. And the dance becomes more intense and more intense and even more intense, and then it stops. There is an end to the music. There is an end to the dance. Pretty traumatic stuff back then. This time? Well, this time we're introduced to a young surgeon by the name of Dr. John J. Morgan. He is young, and he's already listed as one of the top doctors in the Washington, D.C. area. He has a very reassuring manner in everything he does. I eventually nicknamed him Dr. Happy, because he's always so friggin' optimistic. Good news, it's just old scar tissue from your previous biopsies. Don't worry, there's no tumor, there's no cancer, I'm sure of it. There's not much conversation right now, just an awkward silence with awkward motions, the scooting the chairs. Dr. Hackey is reluctant to start. And all of a sudden, I'm watching this scene unfold from above it. The only other time in my life I've ever had an out-of-body experience was when I was having my tonsils out and I was 6 years old. I can remember from back then looking down from above my back, almost touching the ceiling as the doctors talk about me and work on me while I'm still out. The shaded area where the lump had been taken for testing. Something else is happening, and I don't know what it is. Premonition? A sound? No, not a sound, an image. I wonder whether at the exact moment that the doctor began to talk, that the universe itself had noticed that it might be time for an orchestra to perform, and that I, Samuel Allen Simon, the husband of Susan, for 33 of my 54 years, that I might have noticed, that the universe has noticed. The only thing I do know is something is terribly, terribly wrong, and the depth of that wrongness extends beyond the here and the now. It extends into the eternal, the stuff of primordial creation. And in that precise instant that the words were uttered, all of those unknowable parts of the unknowable and unseeable universe shifted and changed. And they somehow let me know that everything is now different. Stage 3, Q. Well, I now know what these words mean. You see, Susan's mother died of metastasized breast cancer at the age of 56. Susan is 54. I understand that the outcome is inevitable. The universe is noticing more intensely now. My soul or essence can feel the change. It's as if the barometric pressure of the universe has changed. The first ever images of an empty, grand ballroom appeared deep in my mind's eye. I don't know what to do with them. They're all part of a veil of darkness that sits behind my head and my heart. I now know what I have to do. I now know the journey I'm on. I've traveled this road before. This is not the first time. One grandfather, two grandmothers, four aunts, two uncles, Susan's father, my sister, Susan's mother, my mother. My mother. It was 27 years ago. I was only 28 years old. I knew. And I couldn't tell anyone, even Susan. You see, it was my first experience with the supernatural, and I was afraid. I was afraid because I just saw something I knew I was not supposed to be able to see. And I do know what you call them. People who hear and see things in their head that nobody else can hear or see. Well, that was in 1973. I have since come to understand that life exists in each of us in a tangible form, and that the essence of who we are beyond this physical body exists. And I was privileged to experience that life force exit my mother's body at her last breath. And now, 27 years later, in the year 2000, it is my sacred obligation to take Susan on that same journey. I just don't know if I can do it. I get nauseous at the prospect of coming to Susan through her end of days. The first time I cried is later that afternoon when we called the temple. We're home, and the rabbi's out of town, so we're put through it to the cantor. And all of a sudden, I can't talk. I cannot say those words. So I hand the phone to Susan, who calmly and matter-of-factly tells him about the diagnosis and that she'll be having surgery. He asks if it's all right if he puts Susan's name on the Misha Berach list, and we say yes. You see, it's a tradition in our Reformed Jewish synagogue for the rabbi to read out loud at Kabbalat Shabbat, that's Friday night services, the names of congregants who are ill. The congregation then chants a prayer, asking God for the healing of body and the soul of those who are in need of such healing. As it turns out, or so it seems, Susan's body and my soul need healing. So on that Erev Shabbat, Friday night, Susan and I are sitting in the sanctuary in the same seats we've been sitting in for the last 27 years, listening to other people's names read out loud. We're holding hands as Susan's name is read out loud for the first time, and we chant with the congregation, Misha Berach. Misha Berach, Ihimotenu, Mikor HaBraha, Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Names are read out loud in the order in which they're added to the list. So Susan's name is read last, and Susan Simon. We squeeze our hands tighter. My eyes tear again. Susan, is stoic. Tissue's been sent off to the lab for tests, and the results will be available in about a week. I wave goodbye to everyone in the waiting room, and I head down for what's going to turn out to be a very long 3-day and night vigil. I can't explain why, or maybe better said, I cannot justify why, but I cannot leave Susan alone. I cannot imagine Susan going through this alone. Now, my job is to be here with her in this room. My cot sits near the floor on the right side as you face the bed. In the opposite corner, on the same side of the room, I've set up a small chair and a table with a computer so I can work and be here at the same time. Now, Susan doesn't react well to the anesthesia. She's nauseated all the time. So I hold out one of these small, semicircular metal pans for her to throw up. I steady her as she gets up to go to the bathroom with the IV stand and bandages and these 2 small plastic bulbs hanging off of either side of her chest that are filled with a red liquid that I will soon learn how to empty. I don't want to be here. I don't do this stuff well. Hell, I barely changed the kids' diapers and now I'm helping Susan vomit. I really, really do not want to be here. And yet, I don't know where else I could possibly be. But all of a sudden, I find myself standing in the center of a grand, empty ballroom. Not quite sure where I am in relation to everything else that's here. At first, I think it's a nightmare, but I'm not asleep. Daydreaming? The ballroom sits empty. I'm the only one here. Yet it has a very specific purpose, this empty, grand ballroom, and I know what it is. It's waiting. It's waiting for Susan. For Susan and me to step out onto the dance floor. It's 3 days later, 7 in the morning, and Dr. Happy is making his rounds. This morning, Dr. Happy is living up to his nickname. He's just full of good news. Got it all, Susan. Got it all, Sam. First of all, there was very little additional cancer in the right breast. And in the left breast, we found nothing. But the best news of all, and he tells us that this next item is actually based on the lab looking at lymph tissue. My eyes just glaze over that fine print. And in fact, shortly after getting that report in the mail, I actually run into Dr. Happy in the parking lot of the local grocery store, and he gives me a thumbs up. He does seem to be a man who expected the worst and got the best. He is delighted. So if the tissue markers are positive, then the cancer spread can be suppressed by drugs like tamoxifen. But if the tissue markers are negative, there are no drugs to slow down the cancer spread or recurrence. And all of Susan's markers are negative. Tamoxifen is useless. Everything is clear now. I'm still in the ballroom, but now I'm standing in the center of a dance floor. I can barely breathe. The musicians that are going to play the music for a dance are now entering the ballroom. Everything is indistinct except for the brilliant lights over the dance floor. Time is frozen as one musician after the other walks slowly past me. A violin, a cello, a bass, a clarinet, a flute, followed by a piccolo player, then another clarinet, even a giant harp. One by one walking past me as if I don't even exist. Yet they each know their task. They each know the song that they're going to play for a dance, even though Susan isn't even here yet. In the normal world, I'm with Susan in the doctor's office. It's early on this Sunday morning after we found the lump on Susan's chest. I begin to walk around the house on these early Sunday mornings wondering, what is it going to be like being alone? Never lived alone in my life. I went from almost finishing college to getting married and living with Susan. Susan Merrill Calmus. That's her maiden name. I can remember the first time I ever even noticed Susan. We hadn't met yet. She's living in Houston and I'm living in El Paso. Yeah, we both belong to the same B'nai B'rith youth organization groups. Me, the one for boys called AZA in El Paso, and Susan, the one for girls called BBG in Houston. We were just 16 years old, and we were traveling with our respective youth groups to the same regional convention in Texarkana, Texas. Oh, I remember this girl with curly black hair and big braces on her teeth. I kept noticing her in that 16-year-old boy sort of way, and I may have stared at her a lot, but I never got up the guts to introduce myself to her before the convention was over. So here I am, standing in the center of the bus, getting ready to go home, and I really do remember this. I look out the bus window, and there's Susan waving at the bus, and I wonder, is she waving at me? She later said that she was. We decided we wanted to get married. And immediately, both sets of parents strongly objected. We were obviously too young, still in college. Wait a while, dear. Meet some other girls. Now, honey, if it's true love, you'll get back together again. All the way across the vast expanse of Texas, from Houston to El Paso. Both sets of parents had the exact same reaction at first. But Susan's mother was sick, and it was becoming apparent that she was not going to survive her breast cancer. I think that the decision to let us get married was more about wanting Susan's mother to see her youngest daughter wed, and thinking it's a good idea for two 20-year-olds to get married. So in August of 1966, while we were still in undergraduate school, we got married. I moved out of my family home into our first apartment near campus until we finished college. So here I am, 34 years later, just walking around in McLean, Virginia home on this early Sunday morning, wondering whether it's going to be like this every morning. The rabbi to her car, and I do thank her for her time, but I don't tell her about the voices or the orchestra. The orchestra is practicing now. I'm scared and confused by the sounds and smells and images. I can hear the orchestra practicing more clearly by the hour. It is real and it is everywhere. I can hear the orchestra practicing as clearly as I hear anything else. I don't understand why other people don't hear it. I need to talk to someone else. So I make an appointment with a psychiatrist and change the future by changing what's going on in my head. And instead, he calls it a metaphor, and he says that it's beautiful. It never occurred to me that the dance was beautiful. I've always feared it again. It's tragic and it's devastating. His words have a dramatic effect on me. Beauty, dignity. Rather than fearing the inevitable dance, I think I'm going to be able to get ready for the dance. I now understand that the actual dance will be the ultimate consummation of our love. It only takes Melvin a few days to get here. He arrives on the Thursday afternoon. Susan checks into the hospital. I'm not allowed in the pre-op bay this time. This time, Susan's brother and I are the only two people in the waiting room. The orchestra is playing now. Can barely make out the tune. Our song is Unchained Melody. We fell in love with it the first time we saw the movie Ghost. I I think the orchestra is playing that song. There are people now gathering around the darkened back of the ballroom. They add a constant murmur to the background. It's everyone we've ever met, ever known, ever loved in the entire world, not just our kids and our family and our friends from now, but even generations from before us. And I wonder whether that mass of people crunched around the darkened walls of the ballroom aren't also generations yet to come. I don't think anyone else recognizes the song, but I do. And I know that Susan will, and she will just love it. I'm expecting her to join me at any moment when all of a sudden the very last scene of the movie pops into my head. Last words in that movie, because I think they're going to be our Susan and my last words to each other, and I do believe that the love inside of you, you'll take it with you. Dr. Happy comes out. It doesn't take him very long this time. I'm not quite sure what to do. No, Melvin shouldn't hit this with me. This is my job. It's what I never wanted to do, what I was afraid to do, what I know I can do. It is how I will consummate my love. I am the other half of her home. I can do this. All of a sudden the orchestra stops playing before Susan has joined me. The musicians return their instruments to the cases as the walls of the ballroom are now empty and the lights come up ever so slightly, and I'm still standing by myself in the center of the dance floor. Musicians begin to exit the ballroom in front of me just as they entered, not acknowledging me, not reacting in any way, just seemingly off to the next appointment. And Susan and I have not danced the actual dance.